You know, when we think about World War II, it's easy to picture the soldiers. But victory? That really came down to the steel in their hands. The US produced this just incredible arsenal, a flood of weapons that completely changed modern warfare. So from the standard rifle every GI carried, to the rockets that could stop a tank dead in its tracks, we're going to dive into the tools that won the war.
Alright, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the soldier's rifle, the absolute basics. Then we'll get into the chaos of close-range fighting. Look at what it took to win a firefight. See how they answered the threat of enemy armor, and finally, we'll check out some of the most specialized tools of the war.
Okay, first up, the weapon that was the true backbone of every squad, the rifle. This was the infantryman's #1 tool.
You've probably heard this famous quote from General George S. Patton about the M1 Garand. And you know what? He wasn't wrong. This semi-automatic rifle gave American GIs a firepower advantage that was just massive. Think about it. While their opponents were manually working a bolt for every single shot, a GI could send 8 rounds downrange as fast as he could pull the trigger. It was an absolute game changer on the battlefield. But here's the thing. One rifle doesn't fit every job. For the support troops, the cooks, the drivers who needed something lighter, there was the M1 carbine. It was so handy, they actually made more of them than the Garand. And what about paratroopers jumping out of a plane? They needed the compact M1A1 with its cool folding stock. They even dusted off the old M1903 Springfield from World War I, not so much for shooting, but for the super important job of launching rifle grenades. The whole US arsenal was about having the right tool for the right job.
All right, so now we're moving from the open fields into the really nasty, up-close and personal fighting. We're talking trenches, clearing houses, dense jungles. This is where you needed weapons specifically designed for tight spaces.
This chart right here tells the whole story of wartime industry. America started the war with the iconic Tommy gun. It was a beautifully made weapon, but man, was it expensive. To win, they needed numbers, so enter the M3 grease gun. Let's be honest, it was ugly. It was stamped out of sheet metal, and it looked like something you'd find in a mechanic's shop. But it was dirt cheap, and that slow, chug-chug-chug rate of fire actually made it way easier to control. This wasn't about elegance. It was about pure, simple, get-the-job-done pragmatism.
$2, that's it. That's what it cost to make the FP45 Liberator pistol. And the craziest part, its purpose wasn't for an American soldier to fire it, it was to give it away.
Yeah, this was never meant for a GI's holster. The Liberator was basically a psychological weapon. They dropped millions of them from planes over enemy territory. And the idea was just brilliant in a ruthless kind of way. Give a resistance fighter a crude, single-shot pistol. It was just enough firepower to let them ambush an enemy soldier and take their rifle. It was literally a weapon designed to get you a better weapon.
And the close quarters arsenal was just packed with classics. You had the legendary M1911 A1 pistol, a .45 caliber powerhouse that just would not quit. Then there was the Winchester trench gun, which was terrifying because you could slam fire it, just hold the trigger and pump as fast as you could. And for the spies, you had the silenced high-standard HDM. It was so quiet, the story goes, it was once test-fired in the Oval Office without President Roosevelt even noticing. Wild.
Okay, let's zoom the camera out a little, from the individual soldier to the squad. See, to win a firefight, it's not just about aiming and shooting. You need a base of fire to pin the enemy down so your riflemen can move.
And the cornerstone of that firepower, the Browning automatic rifle, the BAR. This thing was a unique beast. It was heavier than a rifle, sure, but it was still light enough for one guy to carry and move with. It let a single soldier lay down a storm of full-power rifle rounds to keep the enemy's heads down. Its only real weakness, a small 20-round magazine that always, and I mean always, seemed to run dry at the worst possible moment.
What's really amazing is how they took one core design, the Browning machine gun, and adapted it for totally different jobs. You had the air-cooled M1919, which was your versatile mobile workhorse. For digging in and holding a defensive line, you had the water-cooled M1917, which could basically fire non-stop without melting. And then there's the legend itself, the M2 Maudus, a .5 caliber monster so perfectly designed it could shred trucks and planes, and it is still in service today. Just think about that.
But rifles and machine guns, no matter how good, were pretty much useless against the new terrors of the modern battlefield. Tanks and reinforced bunkers. To an infantryman, these things were monsters, and they require totally new ways to fight back.
I mean, really think about that question. As German tanks were just rolling across Europe, how could a single soldier with a rifle possibly stand in the way of a 30-ton steel beast? The whole balance of power had shifted, and the infantry was left feeling completely vulnerable.
The answer was revolutionary: the bazooka.
For the very first time, this simple tube gave a single soldier the power of an anti-tank cannon. It fired a rocket with a special warhead, a shape charge that didn't just punch through armor. It used focused explosive energy to burn a hole right through solid steel. It was a true David and Goliath weapon that put power back in the hands of the infantry.
But the bazooka wasn't the only solution. For blowing up fortifications, soldiers got the M18 recoilless rifle, which was basically a cannon you could fire from your shoulder. And this is a great example of adaptation. The little M3 37mm gun was nicknamed the pop gun because it was useless against German tanks. But in the Pacific, it was the perfect can opener for cracking open Japanese bunkers. Even the standard M1 Garand got more versatile, with a simple attachment that turned any GI into a grenade launcher.
All right, for our last section, let's look at the really specialized tools. Because beyond the standard issue stuff, war creates these unique problems that need very specific and sometimes very simple solutions.
I want you to picture this. You're on a landing craft, and it's D-Day. You're approaching the beaches of Normandy. And ahead of you, it's not just machine gun fire, it's dense fields of tangled barbed wire. You can't go over it, you have to go through it. That's the exact problem the Bangalore torpedo was built for.
Its genius was how simple it was. Soldiers would just connect these tubes full of TNT to make a long pipe. They'd slide that pipe under a barbed wire mess, get to cover, and detonate it. The explosion would just blast a clean path right through the obstacle, wide enough for guys to pour through. Simple, brutal, and incredibly effective.
And this idea of having the right tool for the job went all the way down the line. For clearing defenders out of caves and bunkers in the Pacific, there was the absolutely terrifying M2 flamethrower. For just about everything else, from opening cans to close combat, the USMC K-bar knife became a legend. And for hitting an enemy you couldn't even see, the M2 60mm mortar gave every squad its own personal pocket artillery.
So when you step back and you look at all these weapons together, you see this amazing story unfold. It's the story of a nation shifting from pre-war precision and beautiful craftsmanship to wartime pragmatism. It was all about cheap, mass-produced tools that simply got the job done. It's a story of incredible innovation, all fueled by an industrial giant focused on one single thing: victory.
This arsenal didn't just win a war, it literally wrote the playbook for modern combat. So as you think about the firepower of the Garand versus the cheap genius of the grease gun, or the tank-killing power of the bazooka, which weapon do you think truly changed the game the most?
Thanks for watching!